Hi and welcome to the Felt Hub. Thanks so much for joining me for another great tutorial. If you're new here, welcome. You're in really good company. I can assure you of that with all the people that I meet through this channel and all my other resources. Descriptions, I'll pop in the links below. They're all free, so fill your boots. This is what we're going to be making today. Gorgeous cat, very sort of particular in its style, you know, really stylized. And the great thing with this is it's just around a part wire armature to give it stability. So what that means is it's much easier to work around and it allows you to get a really good firm felt. And I love a firm felt, I can assure you. So I will just go through the few things that you need, and it's not a lot. What you need is a white or cream wool top. This is going to be the core, so you won't be actually seeing this. And then a carded wool top or carded batting for the top layer of your wool. If you've only got one or the other, you can still do this project, not a problem at all. This is just what I'm using today. And then we've got some pink just for the eyes. Got another technique I will be showing you if you don't have any pink, but that's something else that I know you will have. And then some pure black. If you haven't got pure black, a really dark colour will work really well. And the needles we are going to be using, we're going to be using a 38, which that one is not. That one's my 38. And if you don't know what needle you've got, then the best rule of thumb I can give you is if it's a coarse needle, there won't be much bend. If it's a fine needle, like the 40 star here, then you will notice that that actually does have quite a lot of bend. So the coarse needle, the 38 needle, we're going to be using that for most of the body. And then for the top coats and the fine details, I'll be using a 40. The other thing we're going to be using to get a really nice perfect shape without the need for wire is this barbecue skewer. This is the needle felter's best friend. It really is a game changer, and once you start using this, regardless of your level of needle felting, you will never not use it again. And the wire I'm using is 1mm paper covered floristry wire. Again, use what you've got. That's the beauty of needle felting. You can use whatever is in your stash. But I like the paper covered floristry wire because it's so easy to wrap around and the wool sticks to it. So there's no need for any wax. It's really good if you can get hold of some paper covered wire, and it's not very expensive. And what I would also like to ask is if you could do me a really big favour and subscribe and you know, like the channel, because you know, the more sort of likes and subscribes I get, then the more visible my channel becomes, and everything on my channel is free. So you know, the more content that I'm able to put out, that would be absolutely huge for me if you could do that. It just means such a lot when you know, you get that support. And then I wanted to show you this. I've done a great template, a really simple template for this project. And what this does is it allows you to get everything in proportion, whether you've just started or you're a seasoned needle felter. Templates are always really useful. I'll put the link down in the description for this. So you will be able to pop across to the website and get this downloaded straight away. You know, as soon as it's a booklet, it's not just a template. There's lots of hints and tips in there and some more photographs. But the template is the important thing, and that will be in the link in the description. You can download that and get started straight away. So without further ado, let's get in there and start part one of our needle felting tutorial. See you in there. The first thing we're going to do is cut our wire to around 17-18 centimetres, and we're going to leave about 1 inch at the top because that's where we're actually going to stop needle felting. So that's where the end of our wool that is going to stop. I'm going to start with wool top, but you can use carded wool as well. Either works just as well, especially for this part, because this is all going to be covered up. So don't worry about any unsightly marks or needle marks. It doesn't matter. When you start this project, make sure you don't start with too much bulk. So split the wool down the middle and separate into 2 pieces, and then separate again if needs be, depending how thick your wool is. I'm splitting this into several sections so I can get a really nice, neat finish and no gaps and no air, which is the aim, is to sort of get this really tightly wrapped around this wire. So we're using this 1mm paper covered wire. I'm not using any glue or wax, and I'm just attaching it to the end to get it started. And then I'm just going to poke that with a needle and secure that just at the end. Doesn't really need a lot of securing. Use your finger guards as well if you have them, just to avoid pricking your fingers, but keep those fingers well away. I'm using a 38 star. This is a robust needle. Don't use a fine needle for this. It will break against the wire. So a 38 star or a 36, doesn't have to be a star, it can be a triangle, works really well. Now you've secured that wool, keep it flat, keep your thumb close to the wire and just twizzle the wire around. So you're just following that wool with the wire, whichever way works for you. When you get part way down, again, secure a second time. You don't need to overdo this, but you're just tacking it on so that that wool holds. Because it's paper covered wire, it holds this really well, and that's why I love it, because you don't need any wax or glue. The wool just really sticks to it, whether it's carded wool or wool top. This is actually a Jacob wool top I'm using. It's a nice coarse wool top. You could actually use merino to get it started. If you've got a load of merino there, because it's going to be covered up later, merino will work fine as well. So again, we're just tacking that gently down. And can you see how flat that is? You are keeping all the air out when you go around. So what this does is it negates the need to needle felt for too long, because you're doing all the hard work with your hands as you are wrapping it around. You're keeping it really secure. You're making sure there's no air in there, and you're working at a diagonal angle as well, so there's no gaps, because this is just the start of it. We're going to build this body up, but we really need to start as we mean to go on, and that is a nice firm finish with no gaps at a diagonal angle, removing all of the air. So just work down towards that line, because that is where the head is going to sit. So this is going to be the top part of the body, the neck. This is going to be the thinnest area. So we're going to work back down and start to build it up. So keep twisting, pull off a section of wool if you want. Alternatively, you can carry on working down. It really doesn't matter. But just felt that into place now. You'll find it's starting to get a bit easier because you're starting to build up that bulk. And it needs to be nice and firm. If it's starting to unravel, take it off and redo it, because it's not going to work. It's really simple techniques, but it's important that you follow the technique. Now I am just working that loose wool back up into the next area, and then we continue from there to felt along. I'll just speed this up for you because it's quite a long section. I think it takes around 25 minutes to do the whole body, but now we're building it up. So we're going to the tip. The base is going to be the widest part, which is going to be where how the cat sits, and we are just building it up now, working our way down the body, adding sections as we go. Don't be too precious. We can, really start to build up the bulk now. We're not taking as long as we did with the first part, and then we're flattening that base as well as we go. We want a really nice flat base. If you've done the parsley hair tutorial, then you will have done this around a barbecue skewer exactly the same way. It's nice and simple, but it really is all about getting that shape and keeping that shape. And you might think you've lost the shape part way through. You won't. You will get it back. But just keep working it. And now you can start doing these diagonal angles. So you're starting to flatten this wool. Rather than pushing into the wool, you now can work diagonally. And if you want, you can use your 40 needle, which is a finer needle, which will help shape diagonally, and it sort of just goes into the top surface of the wool. You're not really needing to felt into the center of the wool now, because you're just working the outer edges. And what we're doing is we're keeping it straight but at a diagonal angle. Keep the top part where the neck will be. That final neck piece will be kept loose, but at the moment I'm just felting that in to maintain that shape. And then now I am going to cover the whole lot with some white carded batting. And what this does is it just gives you a beautiful finish. And it's also slightly whiter. I think this is a Perendale carded batting I'm using, but it's slightly whiter than the more creamy wool top. So if you wanted a brighter white, then this works really well. But the short fibres mean that they're less work, they attach really easily and quite quickly, and they're really, really easy to work into the layer underneath. So you're just felting gently, you're felting that top layer in now, and because it's carded, you've got shorter fibres, you'll find that you won't see any needle marks. And this is kind of perfecting and sculpting the top layer. So you need to take your time with this as well, but you will find that it just works brilliantly on top of that wool top. And using this carded wool, you can take bits off, you can add bits. Make sure as well you've got an angle. You don't want it straight. You need that sort of triangle, a long triangular cylindrical shape. Like you could make a Christmas tree. Christmas tree would work fantastically made doing this this technique. So as you can see, there's lumps and bumps. It's not all even at the moment, but it will be. And once we've got it all nice and tidy, then we can start to work on the next sections. But again, you can use your hands, roll it around, keep adding that wool, make sure it's nice and secure, wrap it around, keep your fingers close as well with the carded wool. With the wool top, it's got longer length, so it's less likely to break. So when you're wrapping it around, make sure your fingers are close to it. But if it does break off, doesn't matter, you can just add another little bit on. That's the joy of using carded wool for a top layer. And I use this for a lot of projects. It just gives such a perfect finish. And we're almost there with this now. It's looking really nice. The shape's really coming on. I'm just getting rid of these lines that are working their way down the body. I'm smoothing it. I'm using my hands. I'm using my needle at a diagonal angle. I'm checking around the entire piece and making sure that I'm happy with the shape. And as you notice, I've kept the neck section quite loose because we're going to use those loose fibres to attach it to the head. Now we've completed the body, we are ready to move on to the head. And this is where we really, again, need to take lots of time to make sure that the shapes are perfect. I'm using my template here. I will put a link in the description for the template, which you'll be able to download from the website so that you can make sure that all your proportions are correct. This is the head that I made earlier. So this is what we're aiming for. We are going to start again the same way we did with the body, except instead of having wire in it, we're going to wrap it around our trusty barbecue skewer, which is an absolutely wonderful way of getting a perfect finish, but also creating a really excellent shape. So I'm using the wool top again, and I'm just going to wrap this round as we did with the body. We are keeping everything nice and flat. We're getting all of the air out, and the shape we are aiming for is going to be like a large egg shape, but the edges, the sides, where the egg actually curves around, they're going to be slightly more pointy, but we'll get to that. So get wrapping this around your barbecue skewer. You can do this freehand, but I really recommend you use a barbecue skewer regardless of your skill level, because it just takes so much of the needle felting time out of the project. And it also means you can really focus on getting that great shape. It's nice and firm because you're wrapping that wool really tightly around, and make sure that you're actually moving it around all the time, creating the shape and building it up. Don't start with too much wool, start with less and then build it up. That's one of the key rules of needle felting, is start with less than you need. And then add another section on. Again, we're building up here, we're working straight into the wool so that we're felting deep into the wool, and then as we build it up, we'll be doing more diagonal strokes with our needle, keeping that needle straight. Make sure as well that you keep your fingers away or use finger guards if necessary. And can you see now how, because we're moving this around all the time, we're not continually felting in one place? That's the error that a lot of new felters make, is to keep felting in one place. You've got to keep it moving. And you see how that egg shape now has developed really quickly. I know the video speeded up at this section, but probably take you about 20 minutes to do the entire head, but again, 20 to 25. But you must take your time because this is crucial. This is the most crucial part of the project, is getting this shape face correct. And as we did with the body, we're going to be covering it with the carded wool once we're happy with the shape. So don't worry about any lumps and bumps. As long as they're not too major, they are going to be covered up. So it makes it so much easier. It's a bit like you know, when you see the Waldorf dolls, then they have that sort of jersey, that stockinette pulled over the faces. Well, the Waldorf dolls, as far as I know, they have a needle felted face underneath, and then the stockinette is pulled over to smooth all those lumps and bumps out, and to give a really nice sort of subtle look to the face. And we're going to be doing exactly the same, but with carded wool, like a piece of carded wool, which will cover it much like you would do with the Waldorf dolls. So as you can see, this is building up really nicely here now, and I'm really starting to create a point where the sides of the face are, because these are going to be sort of the big lovely fat cat cheeks that we need to create the wonderful final effect, and to give us that, you know, so we can allow it to have a big sort of Cheshire Cat grin as well. And just keep working it. Remember, don't stay in one spot. That's where you'll create unevenness. And you can also overfelt that way. So once you've started to overfelt a spot, you can't shape it anymore. So if you've got the template, like I said, it's in the link is in the description. You can download it from the website, and it's a brilliant guide to make sure that everything is in proportion. And to create the nose, we're going to make a large seed shape. Again, on our barbecue skewer, using some wool top or carded wool, whatever you've got, it doesn't matter. Remember, this is all going to be covered up, but we're just using a small amount of wool. Keep that really tight as we did previously. We're going to have a narrow end, and then it's going to thicken at the base where the base of the nose is going to be. So I'm going to pull that off, and I'm just going to secure that and see where we're at with the shape. But make sure it's nice and firm, and then just get your needle, use a 38 for this, you know, your more robust needle, so you're not going to break it, and just felt gently around that. Because it's so tight, it doesn't need a lot of work. And the base of the nose is going to be flat. So now use your needle flat straight through the base to create that nice flat blunt shape. The other section we are leaving long and quite loose, because that is going to go up towards the bridge of the nose. It will have your ears on as well as the body and the feet. So you'll have a complete template there. And this now is the nose section that we're going to work on. It's just a hint of a nose. It's really subtle. So work out on your face which part you want to be the front of the face, you know, your sort of your best bit really. And just position that nose dead center, about 1/3 up from the bottom of the face, because we want to be able to pop a smile in there. And then the loose bits you've got, start felting from the top down. Remember, it doesn't matter about lines, needle marks. We're going to be covering this up, but we need a shape there to show up underneath the carded wool. It looks pretty weird at the moment, but honestly, trust me, it will look spot on once you've got that carded wool on top. But make sure it's securely felted down underneath. Go underneath the nose and felt into the face underneath. That way as well, you're not distorting the shape of the face. Handle it quite gently. But already you can see now how that is attaching, and it is actually looking like it is going to be the nose of the cat. Use your fingers. They are great for shaping and maintaining the integrity of the face. Don't squish it, don't squash it. Remember, you've just spent a lot of time creating this shape, so you don't want to ruin it by being overzealous with it. And just make sure that nose is really, really secure. Create lines down either side. We really want that accentuated for when we actually cover it up. When we cover this with our carded wool, we're going to just take a thin layer like we did with the body, and we're going to place that over the top, and then we are going to work from front to back, because we want the loose wool to be felted either underneath or at the back of the head, so that the front is really perfect. You know, you can't see any seams or joins, and you won't really see any once it's finished, but you definitely want to make sure that when you actually lay the carded wool on, that it's actually covering from the front of the face. Now the nose is built up just about. I'm just doing some final touches, but be careful here because your fingers are very close to the wool and the needle. So if you have finger guards, please use them, especially if you're not used to needle felting. And I'm just really shaping that nose now. It does take a bit of time, but it is really worth it. Make sure those lines are visible. Use your fingers again. Squish the nose with your fingers. Make sure it's central. You can move it about, and make sure it's got a nice flat base with about 1/3 of the face visible. So here we go. A thin layer of carded batting is going to go straight across the whole front of the head. And can you see that nose just sticking through? So when we've got this, all the air out of this, that's just going to show through really nicely. So as I said, I'm going through, I'm folding it, I'm moving it around to the back and folding it in using, I'm going to swap now actually to my 40 triangle because I don't want any big needle marks. I just want gentle marks on here. And we are just tapping this wool. We're just felting it into the very top layer of the face. I'm squishing the air where the nose is, and I am working along that line that we created when we added the nose. We really want to accentuate that because that's really important. It's a subtle effect, but it really is important to make sure that we don't lose it. Pull the wool tight. You don't want any air, as with previous techniques. Get rid of any air you can. Pull all of this wool round to the back. Pull up any long bits or bits that are excess that we're not going to need before you start felting in, because you don't want to have a lump at the back. And this is coming together really well. I'm just taking some, any bits of sort of vegetable matter that you might have in there, remove them. If you've picked up any dark wool, get rid of those as well, because this is the final finish. And just keep going until you're happy that all that air has been removed. The side of the cheeks are equal, the equal shape, and that nose is visible. That's coming on lovely. Really pleased with that. And again, go back to your template if you've got the template, and just make sure that the size is roughly the same, and then that way it will make sure that everything's coherent. That cheek was just sticking out a little bit and looked a bit lumpy, so I've just felted that just to smooth it. So don't stop until you are happy with it, because this is going to be the final shape once we start adding all the face details. And then once you've done that, we'll be ready to move on to getting the legs done. Now, with the legs, we are going to be working with our 1mm wire again, or whatever wire you've got. So as you can see, these are 2 that I've made, and this is what we are aiming for. And each has a separate piece of wire. It's quite firm wire that makes it easier to felt around, and they are going to be attached to the front of the body. And the little feet, the back legs, will be done the same way, but without any length. So it will just be the black wool, just the little black feet. So as you did when you started to wrap the body, very thin layer. You want, if you can get pure black, use pure black. If not, you can use maybe a Jacob dark brown black, works really well. But I really like the pure black for this. And this is a black carded wool that I'm using. I'm going to build the bulk towards the bottom, so we're going to have some nice sort of chunky paws sitting at the base of the cat. Again, keep it tight, felt a few times, and then secure with your needle. Again, I would go back to your 38 or a more robust, maybe a 36 needle, just until you get this wool wrapped around, because your finer needle will break quite easily if you hit that wire. And then I'm just going back up, winding back up. I think these are only about, I don't know, a couple of centimetres long, maybe an inch. but we are going to cover up the narrow end when we actually add the white carded wool and we work our way down or up, whichever way you want, it doesn't matter. So I'm just starting to build this up now. So I want a really nice sort of teardroppy shape, but you know, quite chunky, so that these feet are quite pronounced. And as you go around the end, we want to cover that wire, so you want to actually wrap the wool so it overlaps the wire at the end, and then we're going to sort of pull it over, and that way you won't get any wire poking through. See what I've done there? I've just pulled over that excess wool, and that means you're not going to have any issues with wire poking through. And I know that's an issue some people encounter. I always add extra to the end and then just roll it over the top and felt it in. Now don't rush this. Keep working that wool. Make sure it's nice and firm. Make sure you've got a really nice shape. You can use your fingers to shape it. You can roll it, but don't over roll it because it'll start to come off over the end. But where that thin area is, you can really roll that between your fingers just to mat it together. And then leaving about 1 centimetre free at the top, we're going to start working our way back down with our white wool. And I've gone straight for the carded wool because I'm not going to be adding any layers to this. This is going to be really quite thin. So we've just started straight with the carded white wool. And we're going to have, for most of it, there's going to be barely 1 or 2 layers. But the base is actually going to be, so it's going to be a triangle. Up from where the black ends, you're going to work a slight triangle and narrow it all the way up to the top of the wire. Again, using exactly the same techniques as we did before, keeping it nice and firm, make sure there's no air. When you wrap it, keep it close to the wire. Give it a roll between your hands if you want to mat it to firm it a little better. And then you're ready to repeat for the next leg and start on the back legs. The back legs will be made slightly smaller, so you only want about 1.5 inches, 2 inches at the most of wire, because we're not going to be adding any white. It's just going to be the little feet that we're making, and you're going to make them exactly the same way that you did the front feet, but you're going to make them a bit bigger because we're going to have these a bit chunkier. So working again exactly the same way that you did with the black for the front feet, leaving a gap at the end so that that wire can actually be stuck into the body with the glue. We can just continue to wrap, build it up, keep it moving, and then you're going to work down towards the base, building it up, and as we did with the other feet, we are overlapping, so we've got excess wool at the end, which means we can fold that over so that there's no wire visible. And this just makes working with wire a lot easier. If you cover those ends and overlap, you're going to be able to fold that in and over, and you're not going to have any wire poking out, which is quite a common problem. And this is, as I said, this is a 1mm wire. This is paper covered, so I haven't used any wax. There's no need to, because it just really holds it. But if you haven't got the paper covered, don't worry. Just wrap it as I am doing and see how you get on with it. If you find that it slips, then you may need to use a little bit of wax to just help it to sort of adhere to the wire a little bit. But I have used wire without the paper, and I don't use the wax. And once you've got one done, then you can repeat the same for the other. And these wires are actually going to be bent at a 90 degrees angle, the same as the front legs, so that they actually slot into the side of the body. And we're now ready to start on the face details and putting it all together. But before we get on to the final stages, we are going to make the ears for the cat's head. I'm using my template as a guide here. You can see I've pre-made these ears, and I'm going to show you how to make them. Really, really easy, simple shapes. I'm using carded wool because it felts really fast, and what I'm doing is I'm drawing, in inverted commas, a line with my felting needle. So I'm drawing a very rough triangle, but the end is not quite as pointy, and then I'm pulling off any excess wool at the sides. And where I've created that line, if you just fold over your carded wool, you will feel resistance and it will stop and it will follow that shape as you start to felt it, as you can see here. So continue to felt that. You're just using your 38 or a coarse needle here. That's all you need. Just keep working that down. Don't pull too hard because you just want to keep that line. And when we make the second ear, you can use this as your guide as well so that both ears end up exactly the same. Pull off any excess wool. They want to be nice and firm but not too thick. And we're going to leave the end of the ears loose for attaching to the head. So it's important that you keep the end loose. I'm going to speed up the process here with my multi-tool. So this is what I call a punch tool. And this has got 5 needles in, but it holds up to 7 and it's brilliant. It just really speeds up the process, gets a nice flat finish, and then we can go back to shaping with our single needle. And I'm just going to work along the sides now, but pop on a finger guard if you've got one because you are working quite close to this needle. But make sure your fingers are splayed if not. And I'm going to create this. Now we're working towards a petal shape. So we started with a very rough triangle, but we're actually going to end up with a little petal shape. And I'm working along the sides with my needle kept flat, just so that we can create that really nice shape. And then going back in with my punch tool, which you don't need, just to speed it up. But if you're doing a lot of this, then I highly recommend you get one of these tools. They are really good. Checking again, making sure it's nice and firm. Make sure there's no areas that are thinner than others. So it all wants to be the same thickness. If you've got a thin area, pop on a little bit more wool so that that evens it all out. And again, I'm coming to where that loose wool remains, and that is going to be the base of the ear. So as you can see, we're now working this shape. Continue to felt, and then when you fold over that section with the loose wool, you're creating that little cup shape. So you've got that nice ear shape. And then at this point, you can pull off any excess wool. You don't want too much bulk sticking on the back of the head, but you want enough for it to actually stick to the head properly. And again, continue to shape, continue and really take care at the tip of the ear. You want a nice sort of point there. And you can even do a little, if you feel confident enough, do a little sort of curve inwards for extra shape. That's coming on really nicely now. I'm going on to my 40 because this is, I don't want to create rough areas with a 38 star because that will really sort of poke in the shape that we've already created. So using a 40 needle or a fine needle is better at this stage because it maintains the shape that you've created. A coarser needle tends to sort of push everything in and distort it. And then we are ready for the second ear, and I can use my first ear as a template. And to do this, you just lay the ear you've just made on top of your carded wool. This is a carded batting I'm using, but you can use long lengths of carded wool as well. And you've immediately got a shape that is going to match your other ear. And then you proceed exactly the same way until you have 2 ears that are approximately the same size. If you pop them on top of each other, then you can check that they actually match, which they do. And if they don't, you can use that bottom one as the template and just shape a little more. But they don't have to be perfect. And then we want this really nice, lovely black wool that we're going to add to the ears that really pops. When you're using dark wool, if you've been using light wool, I would turn your topper over or use a different topper altogether. It just keeps your mat nice and clean. Okay, so I've got a piece of wool top hid. This is jet black, but any dark wool will do. And I'm using a long, very, very thin wisp, and I'm just attaching that gently to the sides. It's just like a rough line around the edges of the ear. And don't worry about any bits that are loose. That's part of the look when it's finished. I'm going to have a wisp at the top as well, so keep that length long at the top. Don't trim that off. And then do the same at the other side. So just repeat. Gently with your fine needle, poke that wool into the very edges of the ear. Just delicately keep pulling the wool from the mat so that we're not sticking, and just felt along the opposite side. So we're just sort of creating, a little bit of symmetry there. It won't be exact, and it's not meant to be. but this detail is going to add, you know, a real, as I said, a real pop to the ears, and it ties in with the style of the rest of the cat. And you stop the wool where the loose wool is, where it's actually going to be attached. And then I'm going to put a little section in the centre just for a little bit more detail. And I'm, again, tiny wisps, you know, so that you can see through. They're barely there. And I probably won't even need that much, but we'll see. And just attach that gently, pop it so you're felting across the centre of that length, just before the loose wool where the ears are going to attach to the head. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to trim this because it's too long at the moment, but we're actually going to trim it so that it's much shorter and is just, again, a little detail. Take your scissors and just cut straight across or at an angle. Either way, it doesn't matter. And there you go, we've got that really nice detail now in the centre of the ear. So the sides don't look too much. It all sort of blends in nicely. And then I'm just poking in a few places just so it holds. And don't want to overfelt it, because if you do overfelt this wool, it will look like lines along the wool. So you just, you know, you want the lines around the edge, but the bit in the centre just needs to be quite delicately felted on. And then I'm just twisting that top and trimming. I'm going to keep that wisp as a feature at the end. I may reduce the size of that again, but you do need a little bit of overhang. Now repeat for the other ear. Make sure that you match them as much as you can. Again, they don't have to be identical. You won't get them identical. And just make sure you've got that nice cup shape as well when the two sides are folded together. And once those are done, we're ready to crack on with the rest of the project. We are now ready to assemble. We have our head made, our body, ears, our side legs and our front legs. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just show you how I'm going to really simply decorate this face, and then we'll do the last part, which is the tail, and then we can put everything together. So this is a previous, I'm not that happy with this one, but this will give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. So I've gone for something really simple on this side, which you can do, but I've added some details here. So depending on what style of project you like, or who it's for, or if it's a gift, or whatever you want to do with it, then you decide. But I've added some freckles and some blush here. I've actually used a powder blush there because I think you get a really nice delicate finish. I've just used a little paintbrush, but any makeup brush will do. And then these, really what makes this is these beautiful long eyelashes, which is black wool top. So I'm just going to show you now the mouth. I'm not happy with that mouth, but I know what I did wrong. So I since I made one. So what I did was I actually made an indentation and then added the pink wool. There's no need for any of that. So that's where I like to work through things first, show you that things don't always go as planned, and quite often they don't. It takes a few goes. So always bear that in mind when you are needle felting, especially if you've just started and you're trying to build up your confidence. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take all of these off. I'm going to pop my topper on here, although we won't actually be going into the mat. It doesn't really matter. Excuse me. Okay, so first thing we're going to work on is the eyes, I think. I think that will be good. We won't put the eyelashes in till last, but we'll get the eyes in. So taking a fine needle. Now this is where you need a fine needle. You see how that's bending? If you don't know what your needles are and you've got a bendy needle like that, that will be a fine detail. So that's what you need for your surface detail. And I'm just going to poke along. And the eyes are obviously sleepy eyes, so I'm just doing the line of the eye where I'm going to pop that pink in, and then this is where the lashes will sit eventually. And don't overdo it, it's just to give you a guide if you need it. And then turn that around, and then make sure you duplicate that on the other side, or as near as you can. You can always move it around with your fingers later on to get it into the position you're happy with. I think we'll go up the side of the face just a little bit more there, and that will do. So the first thing I'm going to do, and again, sorry, just shift that nose. You can move everything with your hands. That's not quite right there. We've gone further into the face. We need to go closer to that nose. There we go, that's a bit better. Now, you can either do this with blush, or I'll show you that first, or you can do it with this really nice pink wool I've got. So I've just got a small paintbrush, a small makeup brush would do, and then you can just pop, you can blow any bits off, because we want a really subtle effect. We don't want an overpowering effect here, because remember, the black and white is really stylized, and that's where it really shines. So there you go. I've just done a really sort of barely there eye. And what you also, when you do it with a blush, you don't get any, you know, don't get any lines or holes, so you get a really nice smooth finish. And no, it won't come off. Just blow off any excess, and then add some more. Just dab it in, and then what you can do is when you've finished it, when you finish the whole piece, you can just spray a hairspray over it, and that will set it so that it won't come off. And no, it won't go yellow. I've been using hairspray on stuff for years, and they're still as white as they were when I made them. So let's go around here, and let's fill in this eye. And again, not too much on the brush. And it's just such a simple way as well, this way of doing it. It allows you to get it exactly where you want it. So I think that's enough. It's got a bit of weird wool there that doesn't want to take the colour. There we go, that's better. Pop a bit more on there. Okay, there we go. Now, what I have done with this one here is I've actually used just pink wool instead. And again, you pop that on exactly the same way. You just dab it on with your needle very carefully, really delicate pokes, and you can even build it up a little bit, as you've seen I've done here. And you will get the same effect. There we go. So remove that, because I'm not going to need that anymore. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is this barely there mouth. Now, this is just wrong. It doesn't look right at all. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to redo that. You are going to take the thinnest, seriously, the thinnest piece of wool. This is carded wool. You can use wool top. That's absolutely fine. And I'm just going to twist it. And then pull it out a little bit, just so you can see how thin that really is. And I'm going to pop that bit right under the nose. Make sure I've got my fine needle still. And I'm just going to poke that in. What you can also do is you can hold those sides down, because as you push that wool in, it will actually pull these in, which is why you need extra lengths there. You can trim them when you're done. Okay, and then we're going for a V shape here. Can you see? I mean, you can barely see it, but that's the whole point. It's a suggestion of detail rather than an in your face detail. And then what you can do afterwards as well is you can just rub around with your fingers to remove any needle marks, and then I just want to bring this down into a little bit of a line actually, just so it's coming away from the nose. And you may have to do this several times because it's really delicate, and it's a bit of a faff, although it's not difficult. But if you're not happy with it, you'll never be happy with it. So take it off and start again. And then can you see how we're going to bring that smile over here? Whereas before that's just completely wrong. But there I can see that nice curve. So I'm just going to hold that there and just poke that in there. And that's just holding. Come back to that. That's kept a really nice shape. Now I've lost, this was a little bit thin. So I'm just going to go there again with that. In fact, I'll pull that round because we've got a nice line there, and I'll add it on. Take another piece off, super thin, and just give it a little bit of a roll to mat it together. Stretch it out because it was a bit thick. As you can see, it is a really sort of delicate part of the process, but it's really important that you take your time doing this. And let's just see where we're landing. So we're there and there. I'm going to hold that there and poke there just to hold it. And that's looking better. However, this is a bit thicker here. You really want to try and aim for as much symmetry as possible. It's never going to be perfect. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit more on there because I seem to have a little bit more colour now because it's slightly thicker. So just little bits, stretch it out, pop it under the nose again. I always start with less than I need because you can always add more. That's going to be better. You can always add more. With this, it's quite easy to remove and just start again. If you find that you're getting into trouble and it's just taking too long, just remove it and start again. You see, I've got a little bit of dark wool in there. You can sometimes get that from something you may be working on. It could be from this topper. So you don't want any distractions in there. And then let's just tamp it down a little bit. There we go, because we're going to trim that. Tamp that down a little bit and just pull it out slightly. That's it, so it's looking better now. There we go. And then just use your needle or your fingers just to make sure that that curve sits nicely. Pair of scissors. Trim off that excess. And poke that in. And again, if you use a little bit of hairspray, that will also set the mouth in place as well. I mean, these things are they're not toys. They shouldn't be handled and passed around. They are just to look at. But they are nice to pick up and inspect. Especially if you've made one and then you're going to make another and you're looking to see how it developed. Okay, still not entirely happy about that under there. I'm going to poke that under there a little bit more. So it seems like that's better. There we go. Grinning like a Cheshire cat, which is kind of the aim really. It's a Siamese cat, but we're going for that sort of Cheshire cat smile. And then the last thing we do, because we're working with black wool, always try and leave your dark wool till last when you're working against a white background. We're going to pop in the eyelashes here. I'm not going to add the blush and the freckles, but you feel free to do that. For these brown freckles, I've found the brown Sharpie is perfect, and I've used this on so many things. I think I've used it on the sheep baubles as well, the Christmas ones, or the barbels as I call them. So Sharpie, brown Sharpie, if you can see that colour, is ideal. Okay, onto the eyelashes. Now you want the thinnest, really the thinnest, as you can see here, wisps. And what we're going to do, we're going to have our shorter wisps here, and then they're going to lengthen out to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that over. In fact, no, I don't think we'll do that. I think what we'll do is we'll lay it on. That's going to work better. And then we'll come to trimming it. Take our delicate needle. And just poke that in. We're going to work up to about here. So I'm going to take another really thin wisp, really thin. Don't think I'll need all that, let me check. Maybe I will. So I'm going to lay that on there as well. You see why we leave the black till last, because when you trim it, you're like, you know, you're going to end up with wisps everywhere, and you want to be really doing that job last so you can keep it nice and clean. There we go, fold that over. So you see how we're creating two layers here. So we're going to end up with something a little bit thicker. And then we'll just pop that back. And make sure that's nice and secure. You won't see these holes because the whiskers will just cover it up. Stragglers. Try not to pull anything on the face. Try and snip it if there's something that's straggling. There we go, can you see? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim it. So I'm going to start short here. And I'm going to go quite long. Move it out of the way straight away. In fact, do it away from your work surface, because you don't want to then sit the head into lots of little fibres of wool that you're going to have to remove. And that looks lovely. I think I do need some more pink though, because I've lost quite a bit of that eye with those. Wispy bits, we've got a nice line there. That's a bit better. As you can see how that's actually longer there. And then we can just push them away like so. Got some stragglers there, so I'm going to snip those, blow. There, that's looking really good. And you could have them even thinner, like on here, but I quite like that. It's quite stark. It's, you know, it's a real contrast, and I really like it. But I need more blush on the eye. So we just come back and we just bring that blush, or the pink wool if you're using it. That's better, but we need some there. So just dab that into the corners. which is looking better. And then once you've done that, do the eyelash on the other eye, and the face is done. And then we'll be ready to do the tail and then start assembly. So we're ready for the tail, and I have used a 1mm thick piece of floristry wire again, same as I did with the body. But if you've got a pipe cleaner, that will do. If you've got something a bit thinner, that will also work just as well. But I'm going to use this because I want to get a really nice bend in it, but I don't want it to sort of wag about. So we've got, how much have we got here? Yeah, we've got nearly 20 centimeters there. And again, the tail is going to be very simple, pure black. So I've got some lovely black carded wool here. I think I used wool tops for the others, but this is just to show you that it doesn't matter what you use. The idea is you want it as thin as possible. So I am going to pull that away as well. So I've got two bits there. Thin bit here. Now this is more likely to break than your wool top because, like I say, it's shorter fibre, so it will pull away, but it's quite easy just to reattach. So what's going to happen is this is going to stick in its bottom here somewhere, and then it's going to bend. So we'll be using glue when we put it all together. So we'll be making some, we'll be making some little holes in to insert. I'm just going to leave a little section at the end free of wool, not too much, just so it's easier to attach. And then, as we did with the legs and the feet, we're going to wrap this wool around, but really we barely want more than one layer. So if we can get away with one layer without seeing any white through it, I'm trying to do that. And as you can see, I'm just twisting that around. We've got this beautiful thin layer. And because it's paper, it sort of wraps around and sticks to it really nicely. You can, if you want, just put a little poke in here and there, just to secure it. And you must use don't use your fine needle for this because you will break that needle. It doesn't like wire. It's okay when you've got a lot of mass, got a lot of wool built up, but we're pressing against the wire here. So I'm just going in, and we'll rub it in our hands to smooth it later. So you're going at a diagonal angle and you're keeping it flat. Keep your fingers close to the wire, especially with carded wool, because then that avoids breakage. So, if you can get one piece wrapped around the entire thing, then it does make it a little bit easier for you. And if you want, you can just poke a few times down here, just to tangle a few fibres of wool together to stop it from slipping. And then we're just going to keep working, keep it pulled tight, make sure there are no gaps, nice and smooth. I'm doing quite well with this, actually. I shouldn't have said that, but I am doing quite well with this. I've really got thick and thin parts, but this seems to be pretty even all the way along, so I'm very pleased. And we're just going to overlap the end because we're going to fold it over so that we haven't got any of that wire visible. So just poke again with your needle. And when you've got carded wool as well, you can it pulls away so easily, so you don't sort of have to preempt it like you would if you were using a wool top. You'd have to pull it off before you got to this point, but we don't need to. So I'm just going to work back down. As you can see, there is none of the wire visible there because we've overlapped and folded it over. So just work again with your needle, just so it's extra secure. And if you've got a few lumps and bumps, that's fine. You can just roll it in between your hands so you mat it together. But I'm not going to mess about with that too much because I think it's turned out really well and I don't want to spoil it. That's everything made. Now we've just got to put it together, which is part 2 of the video. And you will need your glue and some wool, because we're just going to be building up little sections and tidying up areas, putting our final touches in and getting the project completed. So I look forward to seeing you back here in the Felt Hub.